Holy cow. Can I say what a day this has been for motorsports, both NASCAR and Formula One, putting on a really great show in both events in Miami and Kansas. What a day to be a motorsports fan. But focusing on the Miami Grand Prix, I think that this is a win for everyone. It's a huge win for Lando Norris, McLaren, especially Formula One, which is honestly gotten kind of stale lately, and it really seems like that all of that fanfare that they worked so hard to earn here in the United States, especially through Drive to Survive, it's really gone down in the last little bit, especially with the races becoming more predictable because you wake up every morning on race day and you expect to see a Max Verstappen victory every single week. So, like, why would anyone want to invest their time when you already know what the result is going to be? But today was one of those rare days in this era of Red Bull and Max Verstappen domination that we actually saw a race on our hands. Luckily, with the time of the safety car, Lando Norris was able to get out front there and use the clean air to his advantage. And Max was struggling on the harder tire compound, and it was just really the perfect storm for Lando Norris to go out there and get the very first race win of his Formula One career. It's just a huge day for him, and it was a long time coming. And I know Luke Smith, journalist from The Athletic, did an interview with Lando Norris leading up to this race, with Lando talking about criticism that he doesn't fight Max enough. And reading this quote right now from Luke Smith's article, when Lando was asked about criticism about him not racing Max hard enough, he said, anytime I've not raced Max, it's because he's half a second a lap quicker. I don't want to ruin my own race when I need to. And the time comes to race him, I will 100%. And that's exactly what Lando Norris did. He took advantage of the situation, and during that final stint, he pulled away from Max Verstappen. Honestly, a lot of us probably thought, Max was going to blow by him easily, but no, that wasn't the case at all. Lando Norris straight up earned this race win, and it was very special at the end of that because he dedicated this win to the late Gilles de Ferran, and it was just an emotional scene there. Yeah, Zach Brown, this is the happiest I've ever seen him, and that whole team was just elated, and Lando getting all emotional, crowd surfing there when he was celebrating with the team. I just think that this was a huge win for the entire sport.
It was a huge win for the entire sport, as you said, Kobe. You had so many great points, and one of the big things I feel, especially with this win, was sort of brings back that element of this is not as predictable as everyone thinks it was with the Max Verstappen Red Bull dominance. In the chat room, Adam, this is a feel-good story, first-time winner all around. I have to say, one of the big things, seeing all the drivers coming up to congratulate Lando Norris, from the two drivers on the podium, Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. You then had Daniel Ricciardo come out to congratulate him, Fernando Alonso, Esteban Ocon, George Russell. The respect was there. Everyone knows how much he has put in to try to get a win, come up close so many times, and finally break through, get this win in front of the crowd in Miami. We know the United States is a big market for Formula One. To have one of the more popular drivers get their first win in front of Miami, this is great for F1, the exposure, get that excitement built up, especially right here in the United States. I don't think it would have been the exact same kind of effect if he got that kind of win at Hungary, at a track where it's not exactly the best racing. But overall, I think this is just going to be something that really helps propel Formula One to that next level, because at the end of the day, I think we may have seen some weaknesses in the Red Bull. I think there could be a hope. We might see McLaren, Ferrari contending for wins a bit more, and potentially, especially for our case, and pick a winner, not everyone just picking Max Verstappen each and every week.
Well, Joe, you mentioned it. The American crowd got to see a special treat today, the 114th different driver to win a Formula One Grand Prix. I'm sure there's going to be a big party going on tonight in Miami with McLaren and Formula One fans all across the city. I'm sure are thrilled with the result that we got today, and a big boost for the sport as well, like you were mentioning, Joe. And like you said, potentially game on now for Red Bull. Second time this year, but they have not stood on the top step of the podium. It's already more than we were able to say last year in 2023 when they came so close to the perfect season. Carlos Sainz breaking through in Singapore was the only time that they didn't win a race last year. Now we have two such instances, and we're not even through the first week of May yet. Now, Max was in dirty air on nearly equal tires to Lando Norris. Had nothing for the McLaren there. Like you mentioned, Joe, he was able to pull away there at the end. And we even saw Charles Leclerc, putting some pressure on Verstappen for second place shortly after the safety car restart while Lando was pulling away. So, Joe, do we sometimes underestimate dirty air as the great equalizer? I know that term gets thrown around when it comes to wet weather racing and rain, but how much do you think that played a role today? And does this result, like you were saying, show the teams like Mercedes or maybe not Mercedes this year, but McLaren and Ferrari, that they can compete with Red Bull and maybe take a couple more wins this year?
I do think a lot of folks underestimate it, and especially when you look at most of the time when we see the mid-pack battles, we're seeing great mid-pack battles, and it's always, well, it's the Red Bulls way out front, Ferrari or McLaren second, third, and maybe Mercedes, depending on how good of a weekend they're having. But we saw this time again, it was Lando Norris out front. Lando had a horrible restart after the safety car. I was convinced he was going to lose the lead by the time they reached the first corner, but he managed to keep the lead, and then he pulled away to get out of that DRS range over a second. That was huge. And then I just kept thinking, we'll see Max Verstappen just slowly catch up. Never did. We saw Charles Leclerc in DRS range. What this really indicated, I feel, was when it comes to up front, where you have the closeness of competition, but it's just that clean air is that big of a difference, it is going to be overall something where it will produce, I think, a lot of unpredictability depending on who's leading. If you have the Ferrari up front and the Red Bulls in the dirty air, you all of a sudden not 100% comfortable in saying they're just going to work their way to the front compared to years past where we've seen Max Verstappen win this race before from ninth place. We've seen him go from back to front. He couldn't do that this time. So I'm thinking the dirty air is probably just getting worse and worse from there. This is, I believe, the second or third year with this car where they have the diffuser, try to reduce the dirty air so that way we get closer racing. The teams are going to always find ways to improve the aerodynamics. And, of course, dirty air is just going to make it harder and harder. Mid-pack, back-to-back, you're still going to see, I think, pretty good racing. But now I think this is motivating because it shows that Max Verstappen, that dirty air, it's going to be an issue. He can't just work his way to the front, especially with the McLaren, which uses Mercedes engine, and Ferrari. They got fast cars ready to win.
Yeah, Joe, I'm actually surprised that Max Verstappen wasn't able to overcome this dirty air on the rare occasions in the last couple of years where we've actually seen him behind another car. We've still seen Verstappen in that Red Bull able to get back to the lead and win the race whenever he's been behind. So the fact that it didn't happen today, that was really surprising to me. But the one thing that we haven't talked about yet is, remember, McLaren brought an updated car to the Miami Grand Prix, and I think that could also have something to do with it as well. I was looking at the list of updates that McLaren had brought to the Miami Grand Prix, and people jokingly said it's basically a new car, because if you looked at the long list of updates, that's exactly what it seems like, that they basically brought a brand new car to the Miami Grand Prix, and look what happened now. If McLaren can keep this up, and this updated car continues to be strong like this, if Max Verstappen has a moment like he did in this race with the untimely safety car, or another mechanical failure like we saw in the Australian Grand Prix, maybe we could see McLaren sneak off a few more wins in 2024. I still think that this is obviously going to be a Max Verstappen championship year, obviously going to be a Red Bull in the constructors, but if I'm McLaren, I definitely have to be optimistic of what they can do for the remainder of this year.
Yeah, it's all right, Joe. It's been over a decade since we were talking about McLaren being higher in the constructors than the Mercedes here. Even the last couple of years with Mercedes not winning the constructors, they were still in the top three. I think McLaren, we can now officially say, has taken Mercedes out of that big three now with how their seasons have been going. But you bring up a great point, Kobe. The list of upgrades that they brought, I totally agree. It was a very long list, and you might as well call it a brand new car in many respects.